Welcome, everybody, to episode 32 of Crossing the Line with Greg Heym. I am, of course, Greg Heym. Hopefully, you're happy that I'm here this week. It is episode 32, and to quote Ringo Starr, all we want to do is boogaloo. We haven't been doing that often because the numbers just get weird, but I thought of that right away. It's in the song called I'm the Greatest that John Lennon wrote for Ringo on his solo album. See, you got to learn something even before we get to the economics.
I did, because I never even heard of that.
You're not hip. What can I say? And speaking of Lisa Rae, my co-host this week is Rae Castrigno. She is Senior VP of Research, has the pleasure of working for me, and of course all these brokers out there, because we all work from them. How are you doing today?
I'm fabulous.
That's great.
You.
Now let's now the big question, we don't have production meetings because we don't have that attention span, but we didn't discuss, do we haze her? Lena, what do you think? I mean, should someone just be able to come and walk off the street and co-host the show? Is that where we're going now?
Walk off the
you walked around the corner.
Yeah, my office is right around the corner. So.
All right, well, we will give you a shot and be nice. And Ron Guidry will be nice to you.
The audition started, all right.
Well, we have a high level of professionalism we expect around here, right?
Okay.
So, we're out there trying to make economics sophomoric at the same time. Forget that whole edgy, concise, entertaining stuff. We threw that out a while ago. Okay. So how was your weekend? It
was very nice. Well, I know I'm going to set myself up, but I was at the Met game on Saturday. Given his Ron Guidry here.
Yeah, we don't allow Met paraphernalia in here. Not because we hate them, we just don't acknowledge their existence.
I acknowledge their existence. Been a fan a long time.
That's
to my chagrin.
That's a sickness. Well, I know one thing you were doing this weekend.
Yes, go ahead.
No, this every year my brother comes in from Texas with his kids, and we have a lot of fun. But for the last 5 years, my niece Sarah has performed a set at a local restaurant. And we did that. We just added more Heims. Yes. First it was me and Sarah. Then we added my son. Then we added Sarah's little brother. And we added older cousin Matt this year.
Yeah, it was great.
And little Maggie was MC. So we had like 25% more Heims for 25% more entertainment. It was great.
It was a great show.
It's a lot.
It was definitely a great
show. It's a lot
to
try to pull.
Incredibly talented.
Because we didn't have it. They just flew in. I drove past your game on Saturday, driving to LaGuardia, picking them up. So, you guys have good weekends, Raylan? Okay. You're matching outfits too. That's very good. We should put you on camera for that. Coming to you as always from beautiful Studio 1873, located right outside my office, which of course is always tastefully decorated by our good friends at the Everset.
This beautiful set here at Studio 1873 is brought to you by the Everset. The Everset provides full-service staging and furniture rental solutions in the New York area. For more information, please visit us at staging.theeverset.com or email us at staging@theeverset.com to request a free proposal.
And just reminding you, if you have any comments, questions, feedback about how Lisa Rae's working out, you can send that to ctl@bhsusa.com. All right, so let's get on with it. Let's get to the meat and potatoes.
All right.
We basically had one item, well, two items. I wished a happy birthday to my wife and my mother, and a happy birthday again. It was my mother's birthday yesterday, Joanne's Friday. But the main article was a visit from the PI brothers.
Your favorites.
I have dubbed. Rae actually uses that term now. I don't know if Lena's DJ Gigs is throwing that out there. Any PI brothers in the house, kind of thing. So. There's the older, cooler brother, Consumer Price Index, and the baby brother that nobody listens to, Producer Price Index.
Well, can we do the little sibling, being a little sibling? Can we just throw in the number there?
Look, I don't want to be short with you, get it? But we're gonna. Why don't we start with the headline, because CPI always, it gets all the love, even more love than the cooler older cousin core PCE, which we'll get in a couple of weeks. But what was the headline?
The headline was it was a 3% year over year in June for the CPI, right. And then the core 3.3% year over year.
Well, the first thing that's interesting about this report is obviously it was music to the market's ears. Stock market,
It responded.
because they were jumping up and down going, we're getting our September rate cut. We'll get to that in a minute. So on a month-over-month basis, consumer prices actually fell 0.1%. And we call that deflation, right? People have been misusing words like deflation, but that's when prices are actually going down. 0.1%, is that going to make up for the last 2+ years? No. But it's a good sign and something that has not happened since May of 2020. We haven't had a monthly decline in prices. The 3% year-over-year number was the smallest year-over-year increase since March of 2021. So what's behind all this? Well, gas prices. Gas prices are incredibly volatile. They fell 3.8% last month. Now, you're going to say to me, well, Greg, you always say ignore this headline number, look at the core, right? Because, there's a perfect example. Gas prices go down almost 4% in 1 month. It's going to make things look better than they are. By the way, food prices, which is the other thing that's removed when we go to core, prices actually rose 0.2% in June. That doesn't mitigate the gas decline. And it's a good thing it did decline. It's nice weather. People want to get out there. So let's just look at core inflation. It did rise in June, but only by 0.1%. And year over year, 3.3%, as you said, smallest annual increase since April of 21. So any hint of deflation, again, which is when prices fall, what we've been seeing over the last couple of years is disinflation. That means the rate of price growth or the rate of increases in prices slows down. But they're still going up, so it still sucks for consumers. So that's the difference. That's your economic terminology. And we have a whole bunch of measures of inflation we look at. We have the headline number. We have core. There's super core. You go nuts with all this stuff. Super core inflation, by the way, since I was silly enough to mention it, really tries to look at services inflation, like what you pay, not for goods, but for services. And even that came down, which, not month over month, but year over year, the rate went down. So that's really good. The big reason, again, core inflation has been running higher because gas prices have been coming down. And, the biggest driver of inflation is still housing. Or as the BLS, my former employer, calls it, shelter.
Oh, yes, famous new term.
Have you ever, if I ask you what you're going to do this weekend, have you ever said, I'm going to clean my shelter? No, you've never said that, right? You can say clean it. I mean, what is it, like a castle somewhere? Are there serfs there? Is there a moat to keep the dragon at bay? A drawbridge? Like, I don't get that. That makes no sense to me. But, the government is slow to change things. So housing costs did rise at a slower pace, also known as disinflation, but they're up 5.2% year over year. Now, that's concerning, and we know housing prices are still rising, but the Fed's shaking this off, and a lot of that has to do with the way that the Bureau of Labor Statistics calculates shelter. Ridiculous. So, you want to say a little bit about that? Because I know you did some research on this.
No, not much, because I'm still
She's new.
digging into it, still new into, because it can get a little complicated because people have ownership versus people who are renting. And so some has a mortgage and some folks have their rent that they're paying. So how are you looking at that to be the same, to calculate it?
Right. There's two components here. There's rents, which is easy to collect data on. And then there's something called owner's equivalent rent, where they basically want me to tell them what I can rent my house for. And being that housing accounts for over a third of the CPI, because again, it is everybody's biggest expense, it's very important. Now, here's where it gets, I'll try not to bore you guys too much. We got to make sure Ray stays awake because he's got to stop the film at some point. So obviously these are done by surveys. They call how much are you spending on this. They do samples of pricing and stuff like that. Because there's two components, collecting price data and then weighting it. But anyway, so the reason they do owner's equivalent rent and not sales prices to figure out, remember, the majority of Americans own a home, a little less than 2/3. So the logic makes sense. We're looking at the cost of the housing, basically what it would cost to live in that house. We're not interested in the appreciation. We're not interested in what it's worth because you're not paying extra based on what it's worth. They ignore property taxes. It's just basically what would be the rental costs. And there are basically 6 groups of people they survey. So that means they only hit each group once every 6 months. And it's hard to trace changes. It's like, okay, we're going to see this changes. I'll see you in 6 months. It's crazy.
So it's a great economic term. It's lagging.
It's a lagging thing. And that's what Fed Chair Powell has said, that it could take a couple of years till it gets closer to reality. Right. So they're not worried about it. It's basically a number that people aren't paying. If you think about it, if you own your home, a lot of people are paying less than what it would rent for, obviously. So it's a little bit crazy. So they're still looking at other goods. Obviously, food prices have been a problem, and they're tracking services very closely. So we'll stay on top of this because it's kind of our job. But to sum all this up, it's a very good CPI report, right? The markets loved it. We love it. Rae had cake.
Markets had no problem with it.
But then, when you see cooling in the numbers, that's good. And you see outright deflation, that's worth, we should have opened a bottle of something here. But now everybody's talking about September rate cuts like it's a done deal. And it's about a 90% done deal, it seems, based on what I've seen in the markets.
Current odds are about 90%.
Right. I still think that's a bad idea. I think it's too soon. But remember a couple of things. One, the Fed can cut anytime it wants. It doesn't, it's the because I told you so thing, right? They can just do it. And their target is 2% year over year, but that's not this number. They're looking at core personal consumption expenditures index, which is the definitive thing on both prices and sales. So this week we're going to talk about the PI brothers. And by the way, the producer price index was a little bit higher than expected, but nobody cares about that. That's not going to drown out the good news from CPI. So this will get canceled out, and then next week we'll have retail sales, and that'll get canceled out by the PCE because that is the definitive thing. But we're so data hungry for anything that we'll just grab onto anything. It's like the Mets grabbing onto a win, right?
Thank you.
Even if they got a forfeit win because the other team didn't show up, they would just be like, yes, we're on a winning streak.
Listen, at least we're over 500, okay?
If that's your benchmark for success, that explains why they've won one World Series, 2 World Series, sorry, in all their time in existence. Yeah. So keep in mind that the Fed they don't need whatever measure they're looking at to get to 2%. They're using a more dynamic approach, which basically means make up the rules as they go along. But even if they do cut in September, it doesn't mean mortgage rates are getting cut. Again, mortgage rates have gone up and down. It's been a year since the Fed did anything to rates, and mortgage rates have fluctuated a lot.
July, I believe, of last summer, right? Last summer, July 23rd.
And it's July now, so that would be a year. Good math. See, I knew there was a reason I hired you. But any report showing inflation cooling or outright deflation is going to push 30-year rates down. So, it's most likely they will all move in a similar direction, but it's not a guarantee, and it's not an equal guarantee. If they cut rates 0.25%, that doesn't mean mortgage rates are going down 0.25%. And a lot of people think that as they cut rates, that will help get housing costs down.
I think they expect the moment the rates get cut, they're going to see it in the mortgage market within a week. And that's not always the case.
In this generation of
it's wishful thinking.
Tweeting and TikTok, people got no patience to learn real things.
Well, that's what happens when everything is instantaneous. You expect it's going to roll right down the hill. And
I know, like instantaneous, like expecting for the Mets to lose and for my Yankees
to win. Yeah,
they blew one yesterday, but they've played a little bit better lately. If they could just stay healthy, I don't. But both teams, I think, are in the playoffs right now. If the season
now we're
ended
in the wild card, yes.
Yeah.
So I've got that.
Nothing would make us happier than to beat you in the World Series again. Well, that's our line item for this week. We're going to slap ourselves and get the silliness out, right? And we're going to take A break for a very important message, and we'll be back in a more serious tone, maybe in a couple of seconds.
What do you really need to know about buying or selling a home? First, it's serious business, and it's complicated. There's a lot of money on the table, and emotion too. You need an agent who knows the ropes. So, whether you're buying or selling your home, work with professionals who have a mastery of the craft.
And we're back with Lisa Rae Castrigno. I know that's why you tuned in, at least why your mother probably tuned in.
I was going to say, at least I'll get my mom. It'll get one view because my mom will watch it.
Please, Lucy's already watching it just for me. We know. So prices are, came down a little bit. And again, that's not across the board for all items, but, inflation is cooling. But people are still upset when they go to go to stores and see, we've joked about shrinkflation and the Cookie Monster and how upset he was about it.
Oh, don't go there.
Me no talk like Cookie Monster. People feel the shrinkflation, and the companies are getting nimble and coming up with new ways to make it sound like they're cutting prices when maybe they're not exactly cutting prices. But we had an article about this where 3 different companies were kind of called out.
Walmart, Wendy's.
And Chipotle.
Thank you, Chipotle. I knew it was another food. But can you blame people? If you go in on a Monday and you pay $5 for your burrito bowl, you go in on Thursday and it's $10, wouldn't you be upset?
Well, wait, this isn't like South America where the inflation runs 50, 75%. But, TikTok users were mad at Walmart because now they're using digital shelf labels and stuff. So they don't even have to say, Ray, go change the prices. They press the button and it changes the price.
See, I miss the days where I used to run around the store, my retail days, and be literally changing the signs. And someone's like, wait, what? I go, yes, sorry, new sale coming.
I had to do it too. When they changed the price of CDs at Sam Goodies, that was a long day because you said the machine just changing the stickers. Wendy's did something, and we talk about sporting events. Sporting teams have been doing this for years, dynamically pricing tickets.
Yes.
So if you're going to a Yankee game and they're playing the Red Sox or the Orioles or the Mets, those are obviously games people want to go to. They can charge more for that than less exciting series. Wendy's CEO is suggesting that they should start using this dynamic pricing, based on demand. Uber does this depending on when you get your car. It's kind of like the credit card surcharge that all these restaurants like to put now. We're starting to accept this. And I think some people don't want to accept it.
No.
In Chipotle, people are always watching the bowl, right? Especially if they're running low on rice. And it's like, wait a minute. My son got too much rice. He's a grown boy. I probably don't need as much rice as him. But still, people are really, and when you think of how much the inflation has impacted our lives in the last 2.5 years, it's brutal. And people have had enough of this. And, my mother's always yelling at me, make sure that you got everything. It's like, why are there less chips in the bag? I don't know that it's scientific.
By weight, by volume.
So, there was a University of Chicago professor basically saying, what we're saying, people are fed up with this deceptive kind of pricing thing. Smaller items, the shrinkflation is getting to them, and fees, and tip screens, right? You get a cup of coffee, the screen's flipped around, and they always start with the high number of the tip.
Of course.
And I'm not saying people don't deserve a tip if they work hard, you want to do it, but we're seeing tips in places we never saw tips before, and
even for basic stuff, you're getting a cup of coffee, and there it is.
It's crazy. And you tack on the price of the coffee has gone up. Maybe they're charging you to use your credit card, and then you see add it up like 15% tip, 3% credit card surcharge, 5% increase in prices, and the math just makes you depressed. So that is something that I can understand the frustration. We deal with it every day. It used to be like buying a car was a very tiring experience because of all the things you have to try to do to negotiate.
Right,
now it's
good
like
price.
Now you're looking at the rice in your Chipotle bowl. It's
well, because people see prices or they see the headline number, it's coming down. So why is it when I go to the store, I go to the supermarket, I go anywhere, why am I still paying more? if everything is coming down, shouldn't the prices go with it?
Yeah, we all sound like our grandparents did. Why do things cost more?
Why do they cost more?
Well, over time, inflation is actually healthy if it's moderate, but when prices rise as fast as they can, then it really, especially people on fixed incomes. Right. Now, there is a downside to all this disinflation. You know, my mother's going to be mad because the Social Security increases for next year will not be anywhere near what they've been.
Because it's cost of living.
I know. And then I'm going to have to explain that to her, and she gets mad at me. And
you're supposed to fix it. You're the economist.
Well, the problem is, you know, she's been living with us for 5 years, and she'll ask me medical questions, and I'll say, I'm not the son that's the doctor. Like, do you ask him economic questions? Why am I asking what's wrong with your arm? Why are you asking me what's wrong with your arm? I don't know. That's what we have doctors for, including her son, although he does live in Texas. All right, we have one more interesting thing here, and this is a topic that I face all the time when it comes to buying a house. You may not have noticed, but it's a presidential election year.
Yes.
And, you know, we had something awful happen this weekend. Yes. We won't get into that, but I know we all have strong feelings about that. And the election itself, it's funny that every election, it seems like this is the most divided election, like every election, you know. And again, I think people should go back and read about the founding fathers. We joked about this a long time ago, that what would have happened if John Adams and Thomas Jefferson had Twitter and could have just smeared each other. They didn't like each other. We had a civil war. We've had horrible things in this country. We've gotten past it. We're still a great nation. But
yes.
So the article was about investing, right, during elections.
Yes, whether or not elections have any influence on whether you buy houses, what you invest in, and how it's going to play out. And
just to make sure you read the whole article, what was the conclusion in there?
It doesn't matter.
You're right. You shouldn't make decisions based on presidential elections, especially when it comes to the stock market. So the S&P 500.
Because everything is long-term.
Right. S&P 5. Well, Wall Street has a very short-term memory about certain things.
That's true.
But typically, S&P 500 is averaged about 8% in non-election years. In election years, it's 7.5%. Okay. But remember, election years don't happen in a vacuum. The last election, like now, things are great. Stocks keep hitting records. You know, we're all thinking about what we're going to do with all that money. Lena, you got something planned for your stock market money?
Oh, yeah.
Nice.
Good.
Wait, does it improve my life at all? No, sorry. The show's about me.
Makes it even better.
You know, Ray's going to go to a couple more concerts, see the bands he likes to see. Yeah, you don't fly. Who's flying that thing?
Cares he's got stock market money. I'll hire somebody.
Why don't we have electric planes yet? We have electric cars. Jetpacks. They had a jetpack at Super Bowl III, I think, or Super Bowl I.
No, they had somebody running experiments.
Yeah, well. All right, let's get back on point here.
Important stuff.
Yeah, so there isn't. These things don't happen in a vacuum. Like now, things are great. 4 years ago, COVID was raging. You know. Right. President Obama got elected in the wake of a financial crisis. President Bush got elected, you know, during a tech meltdown. The dot-com bubble had burst. Mm-hmm. So these things go on. We've had wars go on and stuff like that. So to say that the fact that there's an election matters, and look, a lot of people will be really mad if their candidate doesn't, you know, win. You got to grow up and act like an adult at some point. But also remember, too, that it's the president just can't go in, although some of them think so, and can change everything.
Right.
I mean, President Biden has tried to waive as much student debt as possible. Some of that has been not allowed by the courts. Right. But we're probably going to have a divided government. It's unlikely that one party gets all three. And even when that has happened, we haven't seen huge changes. The most surprising was the Democrats took control of everything in the mid-years. When they came into office, they had control of everything, and they didn't get rid of the SALT cap. Surprising until you realize that there's only a couple states that affects. That's why also people ask, you know, how do housing markets do in election years? To isolate that one thing from recession, war, inflation, rates, it's too much work. You know, We do a lot around here. And again, it's hard. These things don't happen by themselves, and it's not in a perfect world that it happens. So long-term, a home is a long-term investment. Stocks should be a long-term investment. Presidents will come and go. Things will happen. We'll get mad. Maybe we'll get happy at some point. Maybe the Mets win again. Probably not.
Had to go there.
Well, maybe even the Jets go to the playoffs, the longest playoff drought. We'll see.
Oh, that's right.
Aaron Rodgers getting older by the day. So, don't. My brother graduated medical school. There was a professor that gave a speech and said one of the smartest things I've ever heard said, at least that I didn't say, because everything I say is smart.
Absolutely.
She said decisions made out of fear are always wrong. And, we get emotional about things. We stray away from the long-term approach that has been proven to work, whether it's stocks or home ownership or any other investment you want to make. So I think the best advice for everybody is have a plan, discuss it with your professional, whoever you talk to these things about, and stick with it.
Right. Keep long-term goals in mind.
That a lot of people sold stocks in the wake of Lehman Brothers, locked in a 40% loss. When COVID raged, a lot of people panicked, sold their stocks, locked in 25, 30% loss. Have a long-term view. Don't panic. And don't let emotions, they're supposed to be agnostic about money to a certain degree, where it's like, this is the plan, this is what we're doing, it'll work, regardless of who's in office.
Right.
Because the stock market controls itself to a lot of degree. I mean, you look at, they can't make Jerome Powell cut rates, but they can put a lot of pressure on him to do so. And that's why that number of the percentage of a September rate hike by next week could be, at 100%, that they're really pushing for it. We'll see how,
I was going to say PCE, right?
Yeah, I mean, we'll get retail sales. That's the, remember, the fact that if they feel confident they can cut rates, it's not for a great reason. They're cutting rates because the economy is slowing. We've seen hiring slowing. We've talked about why those numbers are a little deceiving too, that it may actually be worse. The hiring has all been part-timers. Retail sales have been weak. Consumers are tapped out. The credit card debt, over $1.1 trillion. That weighs hard. And with lower prices comes lower wage increases. Now, wages are still growing a little bit more than prices, which is good. It doesn't help get inflation down any quicker, obviously, because if you have more money, but people continue, even if they spend the same amount of money, they're getting significantly less than they did a year ago. And that's a drag, as the old generation used to say.
Certainly is.
Well, that's the show. See, time flies by.
Flies. Yes.
My highly trained, right? I had about 5 minutes of training on the way in here. The first episode has left me in a position to we all believed that you were going to do just fine.
Oh, thank you.
And you did.
Well, thank you.
What was it? Everything you hoped it would be?
Of course.
Okay, well,
Of course. And so much more.
we have Rae to keep us in check. If we ever think that we're not doing something right, and he applauds himself. You don't see me applauding for myself, but Rae feels comfortable doing that, and why not? He is great.
Yes.
Thanks again to everybody for all your support. I hate to keep saying like and subscribe, but I'm contractually obligated to do so. And
well, who knows now with my mom watching.
Yeah, because if we just get a mom a week to watch the show,
we're in business.
We'll have 52 more, people tuning in a year than we're not, and that's growth.
Listen, I have a big Italian family. Let me just get my family involved, and there you go.
Well, that would, every little bit helps. Plus, we're out there to inform the people. We are out there fighting for you and fighting the fight against shrinkflation and, overhyping the Mets or whatever may be on our radar.
Oh, my poor Mets.
I know.
My poor Mets.
Yeah, we'll talk about more in our next show.
Yeah.
But again, thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next week on Crossing the Line.